Turning red. Pixar has been on a roll with the latest chapter in their history, where their recent animated features are now crafted by a new generation of filmmakers and animation leaders. I know that some were concerned about the studio's future without the guidance of their acclaimed directors like Andrew Stanton, Brad Bird, and Lee Unkrich, but these new storytellers have so far proven that they are well capable of carrying Pixar's legacy, while also supplying fresh materials to continue their reputation of delivering top-quality original content. Sure, not all of them come out either amazing or perfect, but there is no denying that there is a charm to these recent films, since it is noticeable how there was so much heart put into them so that these new voices could tell their personal stories, like Dan Scanlon's Onward and Enrico Casarosa's Luca. And then there's today's subject, Turning Red, which marks as a milestone for Pixar as not just their first movie solely directed by a woman, but also a woman of color with Domee Shi, who previously made the Oscar-winning short Bao. With her personal story, she made a controversial decision that to this day have made many upset and even questioned the integrity of Pixar. Yes, as shocking as this may sound, Domee Shi purposely has this movie be set in Toronto, Canada. But don't worry, in order to lighten up the mood, she added some Chinese mythology where the lead frequently turns into a giant fluffy red panda, so there shouldn't be too much to worry about. But now that we'll be seeing the Lee family curse in action, will this movie make me turn red out of blushing or out of anger? Let's find out. The story. Okay, maybe calling it a curse may sound a bit harsh, but for me, it can often feel like one. Technically, it's a magical tradition that's been passed on every generation to every girl in the Lee family, where they transform into a giant red panda whenever they lose control of their emotions. However, that can be quite a problem for May, especially when she's at the age where she's more interested in boys and cares more about having fun with her friends than to impress her mom. I'll start out by pointing out the one flaw with the picture where the script is not Pixar's strongest. The narrative itself, with the lead's conflict of turning into a red panda, makes it clear of what kind of story it's going to be, as she's adjusting to her new transformation and contemplates if her new form can be considered either a blessing or a curse. Not to mention that there is an additional plotline that sounds like it was taken straight out of a Goofy movie, as May has to also make the tough choice of either to respect her mother's wishes or to lie in order to go to a concert. This leads the picture to be a lot clearer of what the outcome could most likely be. Not to say that it doesn't have any surprises in store, but it's hard to consider this plot to be viewed as fully original with the kind of recycled materials that it's using.
Okay, well, thanks for listening. Good night.
But even if the story itself is not the best out there, that doesn't mean it's a bad story at all. Thanks to the incredible directing work of Domee Shi, what saves this film from its drawbacks is the execution. How it makes this narrative feel engaging to have its audience feel emotionally connected to what May is going through. One significant factor that really helps this is the humor. This could possibly be the funniest Pixar film so far. Rather it be through the personalities, the 2000s boy band craze setting, or the visual moments, the movie knows how to deliver a good quantity of gags that are capable of giving out a real good laugh. But even more than the comedy, the key to what makes this storytelling special is the combination of the world building with the Lee family lore, and presenting it all from May's perspective. The film really dives deep into the Chinese-themed legend of the family, and how every female Lee becomes a panda as a form of protection. However, while useful in ancient China, it becomes more of a burden and not as necessary in modern Canada. In the case of May, her panda form highlights how she is growing out of her phase of being her mother's pupil, and how she herself is changing where her interests are more with boys and the boy band group Four Town. Of course, this is a drastic change as the life she was living before now feels like a cage, and her mom has become what is keeping her from her true freedom than an admirable figure. This also leads to how the movie handles its message, making it the emotional core of the film about how, over time, we all change, and not all of it is perfect. However, instead of trying to get rid of the more problematic aspects, we learn to embrace them and how to make them a positive feature.
The point isn't to push the bad stuff away, it's to make room for it. Live with it.
Maybe a bit of a typical be yourself type of moral and does play into the unoriginality of the narrative, but again, the execution makes it feel powerful and have May feel more relatable regarding her special situation, while even having its viewers think about themselves and their own changes and quirks. The script probably could use a little work to make it less predictable, but the story really made the most out of it to make it a fun and quite engaging feature. The animation. In Pixar's last feature film, they decided to update how they usually craft their animation in order to produce something that's a lot more reminiscent to anime. However, where Luca takes more inspiration from the Studio Ghibli films, Turning Red, on the other hand, doubles down on the style to make it a true homage of anime in general, in order to have the animation be completely dynamic. And that's the best way to describe what it visually tries to do. Everything that you see is a lot more dynamic in order to make the personalities and even the humor be more effective. This is especially the case when they can be comically over the top with the characters' expressions and some of their poses, and even play with the lighting and effects to really sell the emotions.
May? Why are you staring at Carter Murphy Mayhew?
I wasn't.
But this is not to say that they always try to be funny. Whenever times do get serious, it knows how to sell the mood of that as well, and show some subtlety of how May or other characters are feeling during their more somber times. Also, a big part of what helps the character animation to be more expressive and lively is by keeping the design simple. In a way, it is similar to what the Pixar team did in Luca, where the aesthetic is a lot more round and have a cuter look to make it all seem appealing, even when the protagonist is in their monster form so that they are still friendly looking no matter what. As for the environment around the characters, as much as I joked about how it is set in Toronto, the animators know how to make it look really good. Of course, as a higher budgeted Pixar film, the movie does not hold back in implementing so much detail to reflect both the Lee family's heritage and how they've adapted to their home, while also putting in that artistic touch where the color palette is generally lighter to have the central character stand out more from its surroundings. Not to mention the detail in the textures that really made May look as fluffy as she is.
What?
He's a red panda! Sick. You're so fluffy! You're so fluffy! I've always wanted a tail.
Priya, Abby, quit it.
But speaking of the family's heritage, the standout element in the visuals is when the red panda mythology comes into play. This is where the effects and the lighting come in again to really highlight these times and have the lore feel more immersive while still feeling in place with its contemporary setting. This is where it also has a lot of fun playing with May's transformations and sometimes have just parts of her panda side show up as she struggles with keeping her cool. I'd also like to add that, without spoiling anything, the more fantastical elements also play a big role in delivering a spectacular climax, throwing everything it has in its mythology to make the moment feel intense, magical, and even touching. Regardless of May's form, either as a teenage girl or as a giant fluffy red panda, the animation allows Pixar to make something new and still maintain its reputation of delivering great results. The characters. As it counts as a coming-of-age story, this means that the characters play an integral part in driving the story. Well, actually, it's mostly focusing on just one character that we see coming of age, and as the trailer said it best,
OMG!
At the start of the film, May is the ideal student, always getting perfect scores at school and putting her family first to make sure that her mom is always proud of her. However, as a 13-year-old, she suddenly grows the need of independence. Her interests are becoming less to please her mother and more for herself as she becomes more attracted to boys and Fortown, resulting in her life to feel like she doesn't have an identity of her own. She's not being who she wants to be. She's just who her mother wants her to be. And with this new red panda form that she got, while sudden and problematic at first, it is actually the key to her rebellion and what allows her to figure out her true self, both the good and the bad. Obviously, the whole red panda situation is a symbolism of puberty, and the way that May handles it is not far off from what everyone goes through when they're no longer a kid.
It's happened already?
What did you say?
Along her side, there are her BFFs, Miriam, Priya, and Abby. While their personalities are technically one note and they're meant to be just one unit as May's friends, they do make the most out of their one trait, like Miriam's supportive nature, Priya's goth-like attitude, and Abby's wild energy. And they do a great job to present a realistic friendship as they use the materials they have and May's ability to get those tickets to Fortown. In her school, there is also Tyler, May's bully who comes from a rich family who is expectedly a jerk, but does eventually open up after noticing her red panda side has become quite beloved. But what's keeping May from being her true self is her mother, Ming. Unlike May's calmer and openly understanding dad, some could easily say that she's just a Karen and is way too much of a helicopter mom. But she does have her reasons. Based on the trauma of her red panda experience, she wants May to have the dream life that she wanted. However, when the time finally came that her daughter entered pandahood, her protectiveness cranks up to the next level in fear that she might mess up like she did, which makes it harder to handle when May wants to start detaching herself from her mom. This is not to say that it excuses her behavior, but it adds an understanding layer to her actions and does play a significant role in both the film's mythology and emotional core.
Why didn't you warn me?
I thought I had more time. You're just a child. I thought if I watched you like a hawk, I'd see the signs and be able to prepare.
Also, I'd like to add that a big part of effectively showing the character's soul is from the voice acting. This is especially the case with Rosalie Chang as May and Sandra Oh as Ming, where they both really let out their emotions and make the impact of their words much stronger and more credible with their mother-daughter relationship. Like the animation, their performance relies on selling the dynamic, and it works quite well.
Huh? May, what is this?
It's nothing, just the boy. He's
A
no one.
boy? Who is he? Did he do these things to you?
No, it's just made up, Mom.
While May can end up taking more space than others, sometimes both figuratively and literally, at least she does a great job to carry the film and present her bond with both her friends and her family. And with that kind of support, the movie does move forward well with an all-around solid cast. Just like how May turned into a giant fluffy red panda, while not everything about the movie is perfect, it did manage to take its change and turn them into something that is so much fun. Turning Red is a great animated feature that is another example of how the new talent is capable of making original content that can be on par with Pixar's classics. While the script can leave room for some improvement, everything else is still on point thanks to its engaging and heartfelt story, highly enjoyable comedy, awesomely dynamic animation, a thought-provoking message about growing up, and memorable characters that all make the experience pleasantly worth it. I am aware that, especially before its release, this caused some outrage on the internet just for being itself. Especially when the loudest critics who oppose the film are incapable of seeing beyond the surface, and they spread their hatred on it because they can only see race and gender. However, for those who are more intelligent than that, they will experience a wonderful film that is worth their time, So yes, I do recommend checking this one out. I can especially imagine young teens really getting into this who are going through the same changes as May. Well, maybe not exactly the same, but you know what I mean. No matter how those changes can be, change is always good and natural. And with how this movie presents that beautifully, I'm happy to give this the Animat seal of approval. Even the change that Pixar made with movies like this is already one that I'm really enjoying so far.
We love you, May. You're our girl. Yeah, no matter what. Panda or no panda.